All right, let's go. Good evening, everyone. How are we? Enjoy. I trust you had a nice Christmas and a New Year. It's good to. I can't actually really believe that we're in 2020. You know, like, I'm only a young fella, but I never imagined really getting to 2020. So it's good to be here. Just our normal housekeeping things. Money in the tin, please, for members and non-members.
Unless it's your first visit.
Have we got any new people here tonight? Okay, welcome. Okay. T-shirts. Do we have any merchandise? Nothing with us.
Hats. We have hats.
You buy a hat, how much are they?
15.
15.
You can have a free pen.
A free pen and free EV sign, is it?
They can have a, if you feel up to it, it's a plug or do not unplug or okay to unplug if you're charging somewhere.
To sign for when you're charging.
And it's really just, if you, just there's like a bit
Courtesy
of
sign.
pop-up, you can put that on.
We need the ICE signs. When are we getting them? When the petrol cars are in EV. All right, the Google group for those people that are new, please see Les, and you can put your email into a group, and when we post updates, it automatically just goes through to you, so you're kept informed. Toilets just down the hallway and on the right, and hats and pens we've covered, and EV signage. All right, so latest charging infrastructure. So I think due to maybe the fact it was December and around Christmas, I don't believe we had any new EV chargers installed, especially in southeast Queensland. But they did turn on the pricing for the EV networks for 35 cents a kilowatt hour and 25 cents a minute. That's got a bit of a poor reception, but I've spoken at length with those guys, and they're trying to set a sustainable level of pricing for essentially what they consider they're delivering.
Is the 25 cents a minute on top of the 35 cents per kilowatt hour?
It is.
So if it takes you an hour to charge, you're going to pay $30 just for...
So I've done some preliminary pricing models, and Tesla Model 3, because it has a very fast charging rate, it's not there at the charger for very long. It's experiencing around 45 cents a kilowatt hour for, I think it was a 10 to 80% charge. So the fact that I'd done some charging videos, I got the curve and I could see what times it was taking to charge each model and that type of thing. So the Kona will experience around about 65 cents a kilowatt hour. And then when you get down into the lower charging speed cars, then you pay a hefty price. But it's designed to have you charge quickly and move away from the charger. Okay, that's the model they've taken. It's still infrastructure at the end of the day, and I guess we should be happy that they're at least building something. But whether or not the market forces will bring that price down over time, we'll just have to wait and see. Because 2 days ago, the Queensland Electric Superhighway announced their pricing 20 cents a kilowatt hour for the 50 kilowatt chargers. So that's actually, it's not on there, but I saw that today on the Eureka website. Now, that's a fantastic price, and that's going to put EV networks under some real pressure with their pricing model. Because essentially people are going to be able to use the 50 kilowatt chargers to charge at like a price that's cheaper than their home electricity, potentially. So we might hear some more about that. Yes, Graham?
Doing it that cheap.
Yeah, good. But vehicle to grid and vehicle to home doesn't exist yet, so.
So what is EV? Tell us more about that.
EV?
Yeah.
EV is like a brand. It's like Charge Fox. So they've built that Glasshouse Mountains charger, you know, with the solar panel above at Coochin Creek, yeah. So that's the brand, yeah. It's the only one at the moment. They're building 40 sites around to Adelaide, yeah, from up here. Queensland Electric Superhighway, the Eureka state funded. But what happens is it's ChargeFox for the financial side of things, to like pay for it, but there's no payment until now. Was that when they turned it on accidentally for 2 weeks? Yeah, it will activate with the ChargeFox car. So how many people have charged at Hamilton? 4 people, 5 people. So essentially, it's very easy actually. I don't know if I've got my EV card with me, but essentially you just tap on the front and it starts charging after you've plugged in. It's really easy to get an RFID card. It's really easy. Yep, you need. So at the moment there's only a ChargeFox and an EV card are the two. Well, if ChargePoint are only going to have Type 1 plugs, I mean, they're going to be finished, aren't they? Because virtually no one's going to have a Type 1 plug car soon. Except for these guys with their 60-kilometre range Leaf. Yeah.
So I just want to try that out.
Well, they're already free.
A lot of the newer shopping centres that have been built are looking at that model.
Yeah.
We're looking at it this year right through, and that's the way they're sort of looking.
And this brings around the broader context of how can EVs seem immediately to bring out this high price, but that's because everyone is in an early phase of their pricing. They're either charging nothing. They're charging 40 cents potentially that's not sustainable. They're charging, or you know, I don't know what the model is for the government's charging for the Queensland Electric Superhighway, but yeah, but that's what I mean. So EV are getting a little bit slammed about their price, but that's the price of a privately funded or mostly privately funded thing. Yeah. So it's a tricky argument about how do you get infrastructure built and then have it funded by the end user without, and then compare that to what the rest of the market's charging. Well, it's whatever you lose in feed-in tariff, but honestly, if the Hamilton charges 20 cents and then the Toombul 350 is 40 cents, I don't know. It depends on what the speed your car is able to charge at. Yeah. Well, there's a 50 kilowatt and two 350s at Toombul, so are they going to make the 50 kilowatt at Toombul 20 cents or 25 cents? Yeah. So just thought I'd raise those points because it's we're in the early days of seeing what the pricing models are. So we'll see how the market reacts to that one. Holy dooly. You could have just put it on 2 pages, mate. Okay. Well, the camera's... I'm going to have to overlay this now. All right, so this year we're going to see a range. I'll read it out, don't worry. We're going to see a range of different EVs come in, quite a number there. And I may as well just, so what I did was I went through and got the usable capacity, the expected range, because some of these cars aren't out and tested yet, and the estimated price, because some of these models are already available overseas. And then I did a conversion as accurately as I could of all like I used all pound sterling versus Australia. You know, saw what maybe the Kona was worth over there and then what it's worth over here, and then did a translation to what they're expecting the Mercedes to be worth, and then so it's reasonably accurate in my opinion. But the Mercedes-Benz EQC expected to come in the first quarter of this year, 80 kilowatt hour battery and expected 400 kilometres range, price 140,000. Okay, so Tesla territory. The more budget MG ZS EV. So for those of you that are looking for the entry level, you're going to have a 45 kilowatt hour usable battery, but just 260 kilometre range for $48,000. Okay, and that's expected. So I won't keep repeating it, but basically this whole block here are all expected after the middle of the year. So we're potentially only really going to see the Mercedes at the beginning of this year, because it was meant to come out in September last year. So the Audi e-tron, 130,000, 86 kilowatt hour battery, 400 kilometre range. That's a thirsty EV, so it's got a big battery, but still only has 400 kilometres range. Porsche Taycan. Anyone going to buy one of those? I just want to test drive. That was all. No one? Oh, no one's got a spare 300. All right, 300,000 roughly. 400 kilometres range. Volvo XC40, estimated 100 grand, 75 kilowatt hour battery, 400 kilometres range. Mini Cooper SE. Now this could be the cheapest EV on the market if my guess is right, and that's 46,000. I think I might have even bumped that price up a little bit from the converted price. So I think it came in 44,000 or something, and I thought, well, they're not going to do that. They'll bump it up to be just underneath the cheapest one, probably. Only 210 kilometres range. That might suit some people, just under 30 kilowatt hours there. The Polestar 2. This actually looks pretty good.
It's a good car.
70,000, 75 kilowatt hour battery, 550 kilometres range. That's pretty much Tesla Model 3 range on the performance, but for the standard range plus price. So we'll see how that one comes out. I changed the name of these EVA ones. These are the Glory, the Chinese made ones that were in Indonesia. I don't know if you've seen those. They're an SUV and a van. We did have the pictures last time, but that were at the Sydney Expo, so that did get some coverage. 400 kilometres range, 52 kilowatt hour battery, and we may see the Tesla Model Y by the end of the year, if not beginning of next year. I couldn't find any info on if the Kia e-Niro, the sister car of the Kona, was coming out this year eventually, because it was meant to be out like now for the Tennis Open, but they canned it. So, all right, Simone, anything?
Not terribly much to report, except that we have secured probably about $3,000 worth of sponsorship at this stage. But with Christmas and everything, not much else has happened, so we'll be ramping that back up. I've had one person definitely who's meeting with me to do with our drive day that we're looking at doing, but I'm hoping that that person will also help me a little bit with this. And some of you may volunteer already. Come and see me again, because I'm terrible. Memory's gone, last year's gone, so remind me again who might be able to do a couple of calls.
Okay. Upcoming events, the 18th of January, which is only a couple of days away. So it's on Saturday. there's a meeting at Nerang driving to Maroochydore. Don't know does anyone know who's organising that? Do you know? That's just a random post, but yeah, that's a cruise basically from Gold Coast to Sunshine Coast. On the same day, there in Rockhampton, there's a little gathering at this point for anyone that wants to be involved with maybe setting up an EV group for Central Queensland. So we might report back to that about that next month.
Just it's a couple of people who've got electric cars that really go into it, and one of them's actually just recently bought the rights to import. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bought the rights to import the Evoque bikes. So I don't know if anyone knows anything about that, but I'm sure we'll hear more about it.
Yeah. All right, Brisbane Bayside EV cruise. That's mine. So last time when I did the Brisbane EV cruise, there was a few people that were put off by the fact that their lower range cars weren't able to participate because essentially they might have been driving from the Bayside over to Toombul, having to charge, couldn't do the loop, then would have to either do a shorter route or charge again or something like that. So I thought, to be inclusive, why don't I organise something just on the Bayside and try and incorporate a bit of fun into that. So this one will be starting at Carindale, and I won't tell you where we're going to end up. I'll give you some directions on the day and a bunch of questions to answer along the way to make it a little bit of fun. And anyone who manages to answer the most questions correctly, then we'll look at doing a little prize for them. We'll meet up at a certain point, or this is the plan at the moment. We'll meet up at a certain point. It's going to be about 35 kilometres. I don't know if you can answer that many questions, but it's going to be a route it's going to be an interesting route. It's not just going to be driving along the highway or something. You might even have to get out of the car. And we'll stop at a point where we all kind of congregate, and then we'll drive from there 20 minutes or 20 kilometres to another location, a nice park with plenty of parking, and we'll have a barbecue. And I did organise Wolfgang from EV Motion Concepts. He's going to bring some of his scooters along, and the location I've chosen is a park on the Bayside. It has a nice wide walkway, and should be able to maybe test out some of those scooters if that's what you're interested in. So maybe mention that to anyone who's EV friendly and see if they want to come along. And that is on... So why I chose Westfield Carindale, it has Type 1 chargers. So this is really only a short range EV cruise. It's only 50 Ks all up, 55 Ks. But anyone that has a smaller range EV, they generally, I don't want to be too generalised, but they usually have a Type 1 plug and they can charge up. And there's another one at Cleveland shops as well. So there are 2 charging options. There's also a Type 2 at Sarah May Wines, 7 kilowatt. So there are some options around for charging for those that have really limited range, but I'm trying to be inclusive. So
Carindale and Cleveland both have 3-pin plugs as well.
Okay, cool.
Those are even lower.
Yeah. Grid only. On the 4th of April, there's an Enviro Tech Day at Gympie. We'll get some more details about that. That's just about greener type of technology.
Yes. Can I just speak?
Yep, go for it.
So the idea is that the gentleman's also looking for people to provide cars that might take people for a quick run around the park that they're at. So if you feel like going to Gympie for the weekend or you want to drive up for the day, it'd be really exciting for some other people to have a drive in your car. He is talking to dealers as well, so there would be some dealer representation, but it's not just Enviro, but it's cars and bikes and scooters and boats and all sorts of things. So.
Okay. We'll cover that more as we get closer. Yep. There's a Koroi fast charger. It's would be 20 kilometres or 30 kilometres away. Yeah, well they should, but I will. Yeah. Well, yeah. They're going to put it, I believe the plan is to put a fast charger in near Gympie, actually. That might, so I didn't mention this before, but the Queensland Electric Superhighway is going to enter phase 2 reasonably shortly. They're very tight-lipped about this stuff, so I poke and I prod and I don't get much back, but I believe with the now that they've announced the price, they'll pretty soon announce the phase 2. And phase 2, I believe, was meant to put a charger in between all the existing chargers, so you've only got half the distance. I think they're roughly 150 to 200 at the moment, so you're going to have 80 to 100 kilometre gaps. So, yes, mate?
Is it like just opposite New Golf Hub with a Tesla charger just 3-phase?
What's that, sorry?
There's a guy just opposite the New Golf Hub who's got a Tesla 3-phase charger.
Okay.
There are not chargers as such, but there are outlets in India at the house.
Yeah. Been 3 months away. I just had a bit of a scan of that one, so I'll give you more detail closer to the time. The Byron Bay cruise was an idea. Seeing as I was doing a short range cruise, I thought I might do a long range cruise for those that want to stretch their legs with other EVs eventually, so we'll look at some timing for that in the next meetings.
Do you mind if we do that at the end? And just have the guest speakers speak? Would that be okay?
Yeah. Very next slide.
Look at that.
So Anna and Ian, would you like to, you speaking at separate times, I take it, not as together?
We have a substitute. Ian couldn't make it tonight. So
All right.
we've got Rob Wilson from Energy Queensland.
How's that sound?
Yeah. Good. Everyone can hear me now? Yeah. Right. So just a background, I'm Dr. Anna Mortimore. I completed my PhD in 2015. My area, my thesis was looking at policy measures, or mostly economic instruments in reducing road transport emissions. So I have been looking, but looking from a policy point of view, looking at what policy is effective in encouraging consumers, business to shift to fuel-efficient vehicles. So when I did it, the PhD back then in 2015, it was mostly the conventional vehicle, but more fuel-efficient vehicle. Now we're into electric vehicles. So I'm looking at policy measures, taking it forward at what policy measures do we need to encourage people to buy the electric vehicle. So we're wanting to get them to acquire the vehicle. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of the background of what's happening in the marketplace as well as internationally, so we all can get a perspective of what's happening. There are so many surveys, international surveys, on early adopters of electric vehicles. So consequently, we're looking at those surveys. It would be really good to do a survey of early adopters of electric vehicles in Queensland and to compare the results with international studies. So this is what started this off. So I'll just go on to the next slide. So at the moment, with transport emissions, we're looking at the Australia's overall emissions. You can see electricity, the government always talks about the electricity sector, which makes up about 34% overall. Transport emissions is 19%. And most of the transport emissions is road vehicles. So transport emissions is the second highest sector after the electricity sector. When the government talks about emissions or emissions coming down in the electricity sector, they don't talk about the emissions in the transport sector. Consumers are making the move to solar, but unfortunately consumers are not making the move to fuel efficient vehicles in the transport sector. The government Josh Frydenberg back in 2018, they make these forecasts and they say that, referring to energy estimates, that by 2025, which is not that far off, there will be 230,000 EVs on the road. And by 2030, it will be 1 million. So how are we stacking up to those statistics? Well, at the moment, National Transport Commission, in their 2019 report, stated there is around 9,000 electric vehicles on the road in Australia at the end of 2018, given the total number of light commercial vehicles on the road is 17.5 million. So not a large number of vehicles. So when you think about that's looking at 2018, I don't think we're going to make the forecast by 2025. So this came out in the National Transport Commission's report, and that just simply shows the sales of electric vehicles 2017 and 18. You've got plug-in hybrid vehicles 2018, only 1,163 vehicles sold. Your full battery electric vehicles, 189, and then you add that with the Tesla full battery electric vehicles. But overall, if you've got the total electric vehicles, we're not including the hybrid electric vehicles, only plug-in. Overall, you can see that 2018, with the Tesla and the plug-in, we're only looking over 2,000 a year. So not a lot of vehicles. Okay, you probably can't see that. I should have done that on 2 slides. What this slide is also from the National Transport Commission, and what they do is each year they divide up in the vehicle segments. I've only got micro, light and small. And what they do is they'll put in the vehicles, the best-selling vehicles, the number of vehicle sales, and then in this column here, they include what is the lowest emitting vehicle on the market, and they compare it. Okay, so if I just simply extract some of the figures from the table, and this is the issue, is when people come to buy a vehicle, they're looking at price. And price is, the high price of electric vehicles is the biggest barrier to the uptake and the transition to electric vehicles. And unfortunately, Australia does not have regulations for fuel efficient vehicles, which means car manufacturers can dump their high emitting, cheap vehicles into the market, which competes with the electric vehicles. The government is not refusing to introduce regulations, and Australia is one of the very few countries that does not have regulatory CO2 emission standards. So, and that's a big problem, because if you look at, for example, we look at the light vehicle. The light vehicle, the fuel-efficient vehicle is the Prius. Now, it's not that expensive, it's $24,000, right? But it's competing with the combustion fuel vehicle, the Hyundai. The Hyundai is $15,490 versus $24,000, right? There's a difference, significant difference. But look at the emissions. The Hyundai is 153 grams of CO2 compared to 90 for the Prius. There is no value put on the amount of emissions pumped out into the atmosphere. And given the fact that we've been talking about bushfires and CO2 emissions, as I mentioned before, remember that transport makes up 19% of the country's CO2 emissions. And this is contributing. There's nothing stopping it. So these cars, like you've got the Hyundai Accent, 153 grams of CO2. It would not be able to be sold in its own country because they have regulatory standards, but we don't. So there's nothing stopping those car manufacturers bringing them in, selling them on the market. And as what you will see, these cars will just remain there. They'll be cheap, and that's, unless the government brings in these standards, it will be very hard to make that transition into electric vehicles when you have that price difference. Just to look at the another example, the Toyota Corolla, 35,000 sold in the market, 143 grams of CO2. That's a lot when you look at Tesla, 0 emissions, 143 grams of CO2 emissions. Compared to the BMW, now equivalent vehicle is the BMW i3X, petrol electric, 12 grams of CO2 emissions versus 143, but the price difference. Right, there's a problem here. So, my area is looking at policy. What policy will address the issue, and in order to transition into electric vehicles. We all know about Norway, right? Norway, does anyone know what their sales figure was for 2019?
52%.
60%. Okay, I've got 2018 figures here, and that was roughly running at over 50. So a huge jump between 2018 and 2019. Okay, they have regulatory CO2 emission standards. Theirs is 71 grams of CO2. We all understand how that's worked out, right? So basically the country looks at, the car manufacturers have to submit to the government, on average, what was the average CO2 emissions of vehicles sold by the car manufacturer. It has to be, in Norway, it has to be 71 grams. In Netherlands, Ireland, they're all part of the EU, and the EU, I think it was down to 118 grams. So Netherlands and Ireland is still under. Australia, no standards, 171 grams of CO2. So what that means is we're selling more high-emitting vehicles than low-emitting to get a high average, whereas Norway is well ahead of everyone. However, if you look at, so Norway, here we have the hybrid electric vehicles, that's their breakup, 10.5%. Battery electric, now everyone is transitioning to full battery. And Netherlands is transitioning to full battery. So all of their policy is skewed to full battery electric vehicles. This just gives you an idea when we work out stamp duty, what's included in their stamp duty. Basically what it does, CO2, so it's based on CO2 emissions and progressive tax rates. The higher as you go through, more emissions, more tax. So that Hyundai at 143, sometimes some of these taxes work out to be about 20,000. Huge. So it actually, what Norway is doing is making the electric vehicle cheaper than the combustion fuel, because they are factoring CO2 emissions in the formula, they're factoring weight, they're factoring in NOx, pollutants. So there's lots of things that they're factoring in their calculation. Netherlands is the same, but not as heavily taxed. Ireland is still working it out. So what that basically shows you in the second slide as well is that all of these policy measures, we look at what combination of policy measures achieves the outcome. What policy measures will increase people to buy electric vehicles? So the mix of policy in Norway is working. When people talk about subsidies, you need to be very careful with subsidies because Ireland is an example. Very generous subsidies, but the transition is not showing. Right, so the combination. But here in Australia, what do we have? ACT is the territory that people talk about that they're doing really well. If we go back, now, full exemption from stamp duty. That's value, that's vehicle purchase tax, stamp duty. Full exemption if it's CO2 emission ban. So if the vehicle, the CO2 emissions falls between 0 to 130, 130 is high, no stamp duty. That's it. Right, when you look at all the other countries, so when we talk about transitioning to electric vehicles, you need regulations and you need policy. To get those figures of Norway, that is what you need. Okay, so why are we doing this? Well, given the fact there's no incentives at all in Australia, we still have people buying electric vehicles, which a survey would be excellent to do to work out, given why were you interested, your motivation. We look at motivation, we're looking at demographics, and we're going to be looking at energy shortly. This comes from a survey in Sweden where they looked at early adopters. And basically they said it was important to understand what the driving forces are, despite lack of government support back in Sweden, to help policymakers and governments to prepare for a smooth and sustainable transition. So even though we're giving you doom and bad facts at the moment, it'll come a time when there'll be pressure on the government to bring in regulation and and change policy. So the survey is to help to get prepared, to be positive, to get prepared, and also it will give us the feedback, the data analysis that we can also publish to the government to say, look, what's happening here in Australia, and compare it internationally. Because internationally they're putting pressure in trying to embarrass the government to do something. Right, so I'm constantly writing articles. If you go on Google, I'm constantly writing articles about what policies we need. So I was active in the last election when looking positive about electric vehicles. That fell flat. But anyway, we're now another very, very important part of this survey is the energy. And I know you will be asking questions, and that's what we're doing, the collaborating with Energy Queensland and also Queensland Government, because they're interested in knowing how, you are driving, you've bought the vehicles, you're driving the vehicles, we want your feedback. How do you feel about the car? How are you going? We can give that information to also future buyers of electric vehicles. So I'll now pass it over to Rob.
All right, hopefully I should be loud enough. Shall I just borrow that for the video? Okay. Thanks for having us. As Anna said, Energy Queensland are working in conjunction with Griffith University on some research. Griffith doing the attitudinal side of things, but from a network point of view, we want to understand the energy side of things. So, just my background, I'm in the demand and energy management group that resides within the network part of the businesses. So, unfortunately, I don't know anything about Eureka and their pricing policies on their on the QESH. Unfortunately, they are a ring-fenced part of the business that do their own thing. So how they come up with 20 cents a kilowatt hour is just as much a surprise to me as it is to you, I expect. However, if you've got questions about them, I'll see what I can do about answering them as best I can. So my role in the business is to try and develop new solutions and products for the network, but also for customers as well that work for both of us, so we both get a win. And at the moment, I'm happy to say that we know precious little about how electric vehicle owners charge their cars. We've got some generic information. We know that on average you probably charge your vehicles 80% of the time at home, and maybe elsewhere in public places, public charging about 20% of the time. Now, when it comes to public charging, we have a relatively good understanding of what's going on there, because if someone wants to put a public charging station in, we generally get to know about it because they make an application for a network connection, and that's all good. So no problems there. The problems we generally have is the fact that when you do charge at home, we don't know how you charge. We don't know the size of your vehicle, we don't know the speed of your charge, we don't know how long you charge it for, we don't know whether you charge every night on a top-up or whether you do it at the weekend, because that's when your solar's working and you know you're going to be plugged in at home. We just don't know what you do. So, in association with the attitudinal research as well, the idea that we want to come up with, and hopefully very soon we'll have our business case ready, and we'll be coming to organisations like the AEVA. We've already been to the Tesla owners group as well to say, would you be willing to give us your details so that we can maybe include you in part of a research program where we would actually start looking at just how you generally charge your vehicles, because ultimately the opportunity for us is to understand how we don't become a blocker for EV take-up in the future. When hopefully that S-curve happens and people start buying EVs, we as a network are going to be ready to, so that when you're the 30th person on a distribution transformer that's got an EV, suddenly the network can't supply the other 29 houses as well, or yourselves. So we need to be ready. We just need to understand how people charge their EVs, and we want to undertake a research program, probably starting in the next couple of months and going over a 3-year period if we possibly can afford it, to understand necessarily also how your attitudes to charging changes. Now, you probably, if you've got an EV, you probably had it for a little bit of a while, so you're habitualised with your energy use and your charging and your driving patterns. But we'll also be introducing new customers, new EV owners to the program as well. We want to see how their charging patterns over time change as well. Maybe you can remember when you first had your EV, if you do have one, that maybe your charging patterns have already changed and now you've settled into something a little bit more that suits your needs, rather than maybe top up, you do once a week. I don't know. But ultimately, that's what we want to try and understand and find out. So part of the reason for coming here today is to say we'd like to think that within maybe a month's time, we'll be coming back to the AEVA and saying, our program is ready. Would you like to ask your members if they'd like to present their details to us? We'll probably have a web form that you can come to our website and indicate your interest in joining in the research program, where we'll put some monitoring equipment in your car. Chances are you've got an OBD2 port in your car if you've got an EV, and it just sits there and sends us data so that we can actually see really how you charge. That's what we want to do. We want to see how you charge. If we can be prepared for the huge growth that hopefully will come soon, then at least as a network, we're going to be able to support you as EV owners and make sure that from a network point of view, Queensland is hopefully ahead of the game from other states in actually supporting EV chargers and EV customers in their quest for a sustainable and an environmentally improved future. Does that sound attractive to most people? Just prepping you for that, does that sound like something that would be of interest to you? Excellent, well that's great.
So we're just waiting for ethics clearance from Griffith University, so it all goes through and they have to approve everything that goes out to the public. So we're waiting on ethics clearance and should be getting that fairly soon. So you'll get a flyer like this that we want your feedback, and then the next slide. The next slide is basically saying, you know, your information about consent. You can fill it in if you wish, or if you don't want to fill it in, that's fine. But that's a standard information sheet given out by Griffith University. Now, the survey is it's a line survey. It's just a term. They have different surveys, Qualtrics. The university has acquired this particular survey. So when you'll get a URL, and which then will take you to the survey online. There are roughly around about 40 questions. You won't answer 40 questions. It just depends on what vehicle you have. So if you have a full battery electric vehicle, you will go only to the questions on full battery electric vehicles. If you have a hybrid electric vehicle, you'll go to those questions. Right, so it will take you to the right questions. Roughly we've had it tested, and a person with a Tesla took 8 minutes to complete the survey, so it's not long. And there'll be questions, some feedback. You can provide us some feedback as well. This survey will help Energy Queensland. It will help the Queensland government. It will also provide data for me to write and discuss where we're at in Queensland and compare our terrible record internationally. So that we need to keep the dialogue going so it's not hidden. And also it gives information to future electric vehicle owners, and that's what we want, to get that information out there.
Yeah. I think it's also, fair to say very quickly, so that the actual attitudinal research, we want as many responses as possible.
Yes.
But the Queensland, Energy Queensland research will have a limited number of people that we can take, just from a funding point of view. However, as you can imagine, you're quite an interesting group to quite a lot of organisations out there at the moment, and there's the opportunity to be bombarded by lots and lots of research. We are talking to quite a few other organisations too, and what we have basically said to them is that we'd be very happy to be a conduit to their research as well. So if we get a really big groundswell for those people that want to be part of our research, but we can only take a certain amount, then part of the questioning, or the opportunity will be is, would you like to maybe also hear from other research agencies who might be wanting to do similar sort of stuff and be involved in their programs if you can't be involved in ours particularly. So that'll be one of the opportunities that you can either say yes or no to should you wish. But hopefully within the month we'll be back to you. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. We might just leave the questions for after, like when we break up, because we've got a few other people that want to show. Thank you very much. Rob from ACE wants to have Greg from ACE wants to have a quick chat. Come up, mate.
Won't take up too much of your time, we're going to have to half a day. I'm Greg McGarvey. Hopefully some of you know about us.
Just over here, buddy.
AEVA Group, or Australian Clean Energy Electric Vehicle Group. We're shovel ready. We've already taken reservations on our website for vehicles. I've got good news for you. Our vehicle, the Cargo, which is a van, is only $29,000. The Ute is $25,000, and add $995 to it. and the urban, which is a 4 or 5 seat if you've got small people, is 35,000. And what you do is you lease or rent the battery pack or the energy pack, and that's between $5 and $7 a day. The beauty of our vehicle, it's designed for you to treat the same as an iPhone. You all know what you do with your iPhone, you take it home, plug it in. Same thing with the vehicle. The advantage with this vehicle, and all of you that own EVs now know it anyway, most of you don't do many miles in a day. You take it home, plug it in, and it's charged after a few hours. If you've drained the battery, different matter, next morning. Our vehicles are only designed last mile urban. Down the track, we've got bigger vehicles coming, and we're actually signing up a deal with a battery manufacturer where our battery at the moment, which is a 30 kilowatt lithium phosphate, will be substituted for a battery that's got 3 times the energy density. So that'll turn our vehicle from 200 kilometres range to around 600. Our vehicle is different. My partners out of Taiwan and Germany, I call them the Elon Musks of Germany and Taiwan because they have produced a vehicle from the ground up that's 100% composite. Takes 1/3 of the energy to produce or build compared to the other vehicles. It's got a skeleton that's made of carbon fibre composite, very strong, 2 to 3 times stronger than equivalent metal, and skins that you can change if you get sick of the look of the vehicle. Please have a look on our website. If you're interested, you can subscribe and you'll get updates. Thanks for ACE, ACE-EV for electric vehicle.com.au. Thanks for your time. I've got to head off to Hervey Bay now. I apologise for that, but next time I'll try and get here and I'll tell you a little bit about the exciting things that are happening. We're actually building an energy mesh, which is bi-directional. We're working with people out of Silicon Valley, UK, France and India. And that means that your car becomes your home energy supply. And you'll be buying energy from our solar farm at about half the cost that you currently pay. So you'll get, when you buy a mobile phone, you know you buy a phone plan, you'll buy an energy plan off us, and it'll be around about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So someone was talking before about charging at a 20 cent charge point. If you've got that contract with us, any place you charge your car, you'll get the energy at that rate. The energy mesh is like a big fishing net. It's just designed that your car can be called on to reinforce the grid. If there's a power outage, it'll fill the hole. If there's a demand, it'll also pour energy in to take the dent out of it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Greg. I am mindful of the time, but we do have a couple of other people that have said that they wanted to speak. So, Francesco, did you want to speak about the...
No, I just brought it up.
All right. Well, Francesco's brought in a motor and some, what we believe are Kona batteries and a manifold, like he's already starting the process for his Pajero, isn't it? Yeah, so yeah, feel free to take up with him. Ron, did you want to say something?
Yeah, my name's Ron. Here we can. I've got a stalled project, 1971 Volkswagen Notchback, fairly rare car. It was intended for a build for a family member who since decided she doesn't have to drive. So, and I'm not really interested in the thing. It could be a great car to retrofit if anybody's thought of doing so, or even just below it, or do it up as it is. But anyway, I've got a portfolio here that I'll prepare if I can, if you want to have a look at it. And also there's details of the sale on Gumtree. But I think there are several Volkswagen retrofit jobs getting around with electric motors, and I think it could be ideal for that.
Okay. Did anyone else want to do an update or have anything to say? Come on over, Simone.
While I'm enjoying sitting in this absolutely luxurious chair, somebody left it when they came to the Christmas meeting. So if it's yours, come and see me, otherwise it's mine. I think that's it.
Yeah, you can.
Does anyone have any? Yes, Graham. No, go on, please.
You want feedback on current projects too?
Yes, good.
Well, come on up. Well, I can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
You want everyone to get a sore neck. Don't be shy, mate.
I'm not shy. Okay, so those who came to the Christmas party at the workshop, would have seen the Ford Transit. It should be running tomorrow. We've got it all fitted up. The battery pack worked good. So
It should be. Didn't say what.
Yeah, anyway, so it should be pretty exciting to see how it goes. We're not sure. It's got a Hyper 9 in it. We think it'll do quite well. The numbers look right, but you never know till you actually turn the key, take it for a ride up the street. In the meantime, a Audi, I don't know what model it was, A4, turned up on a flat tray, and she doesn't care. Just make it electric. That's sort of the guide. So all of a sudden we're starting to see people who are quite happy to reach in deep, chuck some money on the table and convert these cars, which is really joyful. The other interesting one that we should see shortly, DeLorean that's coming down from Darwin. And so there's a lot of exciting projects starting to come through. So all of a sudden we're over that watershed moment for conversions. People aren't shy to look at it. They've seen some around maybe, I don't know, or they want an electric car, they don't care. And they've got a car that needs an engine, why not electric, so we're starting to see more of that. Yes, Mark?
That DeLorean, MC12,
It's
it's got a sensor spined off metal right in the middle of it. How are you going to fit the battery pack around it?
I have no idea, it hasn't turned up yet.
Well, it's going to be tricky.
Look, in the day, if you've got a gas axe, anything's possible, So it just comes back to engineering. That's all it really comes back to. Yeah, I'm sure we can do something. I believe it's just a 4-cylinder motor in the back. So it's stainless steel. Yeah. Oh, is it? Oh, well. Okay. Well, I'll probably use a saw then.
Fiberglass and then...
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so if it turns up, if we do it, of course, I'll try to get some footage or some other stuff like that. The other thing of real interest for our business is we're cooking up an arrangement with the government of Fiji to do a 2-week course over in Fiji at the university on a conversion. The options we threw at them was that maybe an ambulance or something like that. St John's is the big ambulance supplier in Fiji, and they had 3 ambulances that all 3 need a motor. So we're going to engage with the students at the university, St John's, get over there, do a bit of a course, and hopefully within a 2-week period the students can put together an electric ambulance, But I'll get the footage and all the data on that if and when it happens for the group.
There you go.
The
electric ambulance.
Oh yeah.
Blue one.
Yeah, some of those Fijians are pretty long. All right, well that's it for me. The other thing I was going to suggest, we've got a lot of newbies here. Maybe they want to pop up and
Does anyone want to introduce themselves?
and let us know what you're here for.
This side of the room?
Can I ask a question? It's probably impossible, but does anybody know anything about converting an old 1998 Prius hybrid into a plug-in? If you have any ideas, I'd sure appreciate it.
Yes, I was about to
Thanks.
try that.
Congratulations on having a hybrid, by the way.
By the way, it looks like Dennis is selling a manual Prius.
I'll have that manual.
You'll have that manual? Sold, Dennis. 10% commission.
All right, so just lastly, there are quite a lot of new faces, so if you're interested in enjoying tonight, maybe you could see Les about joining up as a member. It's $50 a year, and there's all this stuff happens and you get highly informed about what's happening. So if you could let Les know your details and sort that out. One other quick thing, the overarching AEVA national body is working on improving the website and signing up for membership, and there's a lot of stuff going on in that space, but as more announcements happen, I'll keep you up to date with that. But it's tea and coffee time, and thank you for coming.